Oh my goodness, guys. I'm so grateful for you to listen in today. We have an amazing guest joining us. And in the world where challenges are inevitable, he stands as a beacon of resilience and faith. And his journey is the testament of the power of purpose and the importance of staying true to one's belief even in the face of adversity. And our special guest today is Jeff Higgins. And Jeff is public speaker and founder of Savor Seasoning. And we'll be diving into the conversation about purpose, peace, and forgiveness. And guys, you don't want to miss this. It's very insightful conversation, but it's a part two. And part one can be found on Love and Beloved platform, YouTube, or podcast if you want to listen. And it's called Finding Peace. So welcome back, Jeff, to Love and Beloved platform.
Yeah, well, no, thanks for having me back again, Lena. It's always a pleasure to be with you and your audience.
That's awesome. And I truly believe in the power of sharing our stories and discussing our faith and exploring our personal relationships with God. And through these testimonies, we can showcase God's incredible love and grace and compassion, and we can inspire others as well. So I'm really grateful that you agreed to come again
Yeah.
and share your expertise and your story. And I know that this will be both beneficial and encouraging for everyone who is listening. So before we get into this part that where we left off, because I really want to cover that part as well, can you please summarize your story for those who tuned in for and starting at this point?
Yeah. Thank you very much again. It's just an honor to be on your show, Lena. Your story inspires me.
Thank
And
you.
that is the power of telling our stories, right? I hope to help other people, to inspire other people. Um, but I call my talks struggles and summits, right? I've had, and we all have, struggles in our life, and we have summits in our life. We have, highs and lows. My summits are that I started my own business. Been very successful. We have 25 employees. I have three daughters. I've lived a life of service. Oh, I have seven grandchildren. Shouldn't forget that. Actually, they're more important. But three daughters, seven grandchildren. Tried to always have tried to live a life of purpose, and I believe that somewhat comes from my story. You know, I think when we have struggles and difficulties, we seek our purpose in that sometimes, and and being transparent with our stories, that's where healing happens, right? And but So yeah, so a lot of summits in my life, an actual summit, living a life of purpose. I climbed Mount Rainier in August of 2016. And I did that as something that I've always kind of wanted to do, but I attached it to a greater purpose. And that's what really made it great. I used that as an opportunity to raise $25,000 to build a special needs school in Guatemala. And that was an actual summit in my life. And there's a lot of parallels between summiting a mountain and summits in life. But my struggles started when I was young. I kind of had a dysfunctional family. Mom was an alcoholic. My older brother and sister were from my mom's first marriage. They were into drugs and alcohol too. So I was the younger stepbrother. They physically abused me. And mom was obviously not in a good position to be able to do a whole lot about that. When I was 11 years old, my mom was in a car accident when she drove drunk on the highway going the wrong way. She died, and she was only 38 years old. Uh, 3 years later, when I was 14 years old, my older brother, his name was Tim, by the way, he drove his car under the back end of a semi truck with a beer in his hand and died at the young age of 23 years old. My sister did not properly deal with. And she's, a good, I think, cautionary tale of what happens if we deal with things in the inappropriate ways and the ways that aren't helpful. She lived a life of poor, poor, pitiful me because of the things that had happened to us in our childhood. She was an alcoholic and she was often in the hospital. Probably about 10 times she was in the hospital. One time I pleaded with her in the hospital with tears in my eyes. I've had to bury mom and Tim. I said, don't make me have to bury you too. But unfortunately, she broke the promise that she made to me that day, and I was called to the hospital one last time to make the decision to remove life support. And I spent 3 days with her while she died. Not long after my sister died, in fact, about 3 months after my sister died, I had a tragic car accident. And my friend, Father Chris, did not survive. I was sentenced, or I pled guilty to vehicular manslaughter and spent time in jail and on house arrest and all kind of other fun things, along with driver's license suspension. Subsequent to that, my own alcoholism turned into a rage that almost consumed me. And that's what I talk about. People say at about this point, what is it, Jeff, that kept you from becoming the fourth headstone in your family? And that's what I like to talk about because it's a real story. It's a real there are real things that I did and were important to keeping me out of that cemetery.
Absolutely. And honestly, how many times I hear your story, I'm just blown away. First of all, for who you are today. And honestly, every time I hear the legacy you live in with your children, grandchildren, your family, and what you're doing in the world, guys, like honestly, listen to first part, listen to this part, you're gonna see what I'm talking about. But the fact is that it could go either way. Was your choice. You can end up victim or victor. And this is, guys, honestly, that it's very important what is happening. And sorry, I'm getting like
No,
a
you're
phone
the
call
thought
and it's
process,
getting
right?
me
It's the
distracted
thought
a little
process.
bit. But what is important, guys, and I want you to hear this and see this and understand this. What you see right now, this part of the iceberg of the success, and I do believe that's where the power of the sharing the story and sharing our purpose, because when people see only success and you're not telling them how you get there, they assume that this is it's impossible, it's unattainable to reach, and they think like you're that one in a million and perfect and all this stuff. And I'm so grateful that the people like you, like you're amazing, you sharing actually your story. And I know why I hid my story, because of the guilt, shame of and condemnation. I never thought it's a salvation story, that it's easier to relate and to understand um how you get there. And guess what? Everybody have a story.
Yeah.
Everybody, just how much you willing to share. But by the grace of God, you are sharing, you're inspiring other people. And the best thing, like, oh my gosh, I love, love, love what God did with your life. And I love what you doing with your life, because you're partner up with God and you have to take action and you have to work on everything. But thank you so much for your vulnerability and for sharing actually what happened to you, because it's really big driver of what you decide to do with your life. And that's what we're gonna be talking about today. So last time we stopped at 2 points that you were sharing, how you turn your life around. But I think for the sake of the listeners and for um, actually covering everything, we're gonna start at the beginning so we can get all this information in one episode. So go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, I'll just have to be more brief this time, right? So,
Give you time.
but you brought it up, Lena, and excuse me, but you brought it up, right? It's about a choice, um, and where it started for me was in jail, because I knew that I could live a life of just being miserable, and what good would that do anybody? I may as well just, have died in that car accident myself. So I knew it was a choice, and there were a few things that I had to decide, but yeah, was this going to be a stumbling block or a stepping stone to something greater? I had always, at my mother's funeral, they read a Bible verse from a book called Romans 8. And it says that, that God can make all things work for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And that's, all things that he can make good. It doesn't mean everything will, but you have to focus on him first. And I believe that from a young age. And it was kind of a central verse to me. And I guess I still believed it when I was sitting there in jail, but I knew that I needed to um, take hold of my focus and my thought process. And I think that's where it starts with all of us. Nothing that I say, none of the tips that I'm about to give you will do any good unless you're willing to constantly take hold of your thought process. And most of us don't do that. We allow thoughts to happen to us, right? And I'm guilty of this too, and I catch myself. But interesting information. 60,000 thoughts a day. We each have 60,000 thoughts per day. That's what they're saying. I don't know how they count that stuff, but that's what they tell me. All right. We also spend about 95% of our time thinking about ourselves when we're not, like working on a problem or something. 95% of the time, 95% of our 60,000 thoughts a day. The problem is that we as human beings tend to be kind of negative. And it's also estimated that 80% of our thoughts are negative, which means that on average, over 3/4 of our free thoughts every day are negative thoughts about ourselves. And that should be kind of scary, even if it's only partly true, right? I think it shows the propensity of us as humans. We are tend to focus on the negative unless we are willing to really take hold of our thought process and redirect. Our brains are going to naturally go to negative places. That's just kind of who we are. You talked about judgment earlier, right? I get judged by the way I look or why I dress. We all judge, you know. I'm not going to worry about you judging me and whatever. We all judge. It's just kind of part of who we are as human beings. I'm not going to fight it, but I'm going to be aware of it. And I'm going to realize that if I prejudge that I might be wrong and I need to take that into consideration. So, all of this is very important, taking hold of our daily focus. And what I mean by that is like, for me, it's first thing in the morning. I'll talk about gratitude, right? So first thing in the morning, I'll do my gratitudes, or last thing when I go to bed. And when I'm driving, sometimes, I'll be talking to myself, because if I don't talk to myself, if I don't take control of, what's being said in my head, it's probably not going to go well. So that's the first thing, focus.
Can I can I pause you for a second because
Sure.
now I'm thinking like two things that kind of like go over and over, and I decide I gonna stop my guess because sometimes like I get so excited and I forget things that they go alone. But two things that actually come into my mind. Number one, how crazy this statistic, and thank you so much for telling us about it because um, number one, like I never thought that I can be like in control of my in my thoughts. I thought this is just how I
Happen,
am,
right?
and that's how it is, and that's how it's gonna be. So the fact that we're concentrating on negative, like I never thought that all that self-loading and nonsense and all this stuff is just happening. It's not because like um uh, how can I put that? Like honestly, somebody said that they already said that before, probably that the brain, like, oh, not the brain, our thoughts like an untrained puppy. And I assumed that that's how we're gonna be, but I never knew that you can train your brain and
Absolutely.
actually thinking and replacing the thoughts and all this stuff. And when you said focus and gratitude, focus on gratitude, and I was thinking, what is my second thought? The gratitude is positive.
Mhm.
It's like literally you're replacing that narrative that's going on with you or without, and like
Right.
consciously, subconsciously. But by doing the gratitude, you kind of like focusing your thought pattern on a
Mhm.
positive. So
That's
no
right.
matter how, like you cannot be like really angry like in your brain when you saying something good, like when you're like focusing on the goodness. So that was I kind of like I was thinking, if we
Got to
are so
replace.
negative and gratitude is so positive, so you actually like literally replacing those or disrupting the thought pattern. And you another thing you say important, you're doing this in the morning and in the evening. So it's like almost like programming yourself to actually be in that mode rather than to let the puppy run wild.
Yeah, yeah. Because think about it. If we don't program ourselves, we're getting programmed, right? Getting programmed by our thought processes, whether whether they're positive or negative, whatever thoughts are going through your brain, that is programming you. And it's old science, really. That's why they talk about doing gratitudes or positive self-talk and that type of thing. This is all incredibly important stuff. And here's the thing, Lena, our emotions follow our thoughts, right? If you're feeling bad, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling down, oftentimes it's because we're starting, it starts in our thought process. If we grab a hold of our thought process, we can grab a hold of our emotional state. And, for the most part, obviously, when you're going through tragic situations and that type of thing, it's very different. But yeah, and I think that most people do not take control of their own thought process and take responsibility for it, I should say, right?
Absolutely. And then I want to ask you, would you
Uh-huh.
agree when we are actually don't take care of our physical self, it's very hard to control our thoughts. When we're tired and hungry, tired, I
Absolutely.
said tired like twice. And then I don't know, upset or something like that. If our physical self under taken care of, that's why I know sleep, eat, exercise was like huge for me when I become a mom. I realized, and you know how I side? I side on my kids. I'm like, if they eat on time, sleep on time, they are behaving better, they speaking better, they doing better. So
Right.
actually taking that on myself, I'm realized, oh, I actually can faster capture my thoughts. And look, in the Bible, God says right away, capture your thoughts, that. And
Mhm.
it's so interesting that, and he said, renew your mind every morning. And so it's like ongoing process all the time, nonstop. You have to be aware that this is happening.
Absolutely, and it's very biblical that we're supposed to take control of our thought processes. I don't have any Bible verses right in front of me, but absolutely, um, and it really does. It all starts there.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry,
So
I had a thought and then there it went. I mean, it's oh, I know what I was going to say. You bring up, what you will not hear me talk about is getting better sleep or getting more exercise. I think those are a given. But getting up out of bed or off the couch to go exercise is kind of dependent on if we're not in a depressed state too, and
it's
so
like a loop,
yeah, it is. It is.
like
So,
mental health,
sleep,
physical health.
yeah,
But
sleep
listen,
and
I
exercise are so important, but they have to really kind of follow our mental state.
I heard like this phrase. I was doing, I don't know what I was like doing meditation or something, and just come into my mind. So this guy said sometimes the thought comes so convincing that it's appear to be true.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think that's the biggest trap because we have how many like those thoughts we have like that you just give us statistics
Yeah.
And like half of them, it's just like nonsense that's never gonna happen. Or it's like
Right.
it just happening. That's how our brain works. But it's appear to be true, but it's our responsibilities to take this captive and investigate. Is it true? Is that valuable? Is that how I am? This is who I am, or what they doing? And it's literally investigate and look through it and let go. Okay, I think that's not, because I do believe you're right. I got few times like myself into depression just holding up on that thought. Like for example, nobody cares.
Yeah.
And I just hold that. Nobody cares, nobody love me, nobody appreciate me, blah 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 blah. And it's got so bad that I couldn't walk. And I'm
Mm.
like, okay, God, I'm dying. Who gonna take care of my children? And you know what? It's literally start with like that
Mm.
that could I could say no, my husband love me, my
Right.
kid still here. You know, like I could say, "Pff, I don't think it's true." But because based on my trauma, I just believed. And instead of just getting through it, I just hold on because I need to solve something. I need to feel something or
Right.
something like that. So it's very important actually pay attention what's going on in our minds. But let's get to this point because we can talk like honestly.
Yeah, so we'll move on to point number one, which is gratitude. I kind of already touched on that. Gratitude's so important, and that's exactly the point, right? Are what's going through your mind, right? Are you thinking about the things you don't have? Are you seeing the life that you want to have and pining over that? Or are you being thankful for what you do have? I think that it's human nature to want more or different than what we have, and we have to fight against that. I've got a little information here from the Mayo Clinic. It says studies have shown that the feeling of being thankful can improve your sleep, your mood, and your immunity.
That's
Gratitude
cool.
gratitude can also decrease depression, anxiety, difficulties with chronic pain, and the risk of disease. And if a pill could do this, everyone would be taking it.
Isn't that funny?
Scientists being funny, and it's very true. When we talk about this, I say, every year, right? We talk about this at Thanksgiving. I say gratitude is not just for Thanksgiving. I practice it every morning and every night at least, if not throughout the day as well. So what are we telling ourselves? I don't have enough. I need to get more. Or I do have enough, or I'm thankful for, I'm thankful for what I do have. And what I do have is pretty darn good. One of the things that I do is I serve, I go to food pantries. I also go to Guatemala pretty regularly. And let me tell you something, you'll get a pretty good sense of gratitude when you're on a mountain in Guatemala.
Changing perspective, huh?
Yeah, and when you're on in a mud house, an adobe house with no running water, no electricity, cooking dinner on an open fire, that'll give you some gratitude. And that's why I do that, because I'm surrounded by luxury. We all are, I think, in the Western world, on a daily basis. And so it's easy to forget all of the things that we have that we should be grateful for. So that's one really important, man. First thing in the morning, this is what I'm thankful for, God. And last thing at night, thanks for this, God. And, whenever I think about it throughout the day, too.
That's awesome.
And I said that in the first thing in the morning. It said that, the first hour of the day is the rudder of the rest. I think it's real important how we wake up, and it's also real important how we go to sleep, the mindset that we have when we go to sleep. The
There you
next,
go, guys.
yeah,
Just
thank,
want to give you like some practical tools because that's
yes,
how you're gonna overcome it, because we all have challenges, grief, loss, troubles, and honestly, it's really hard road to go through. So make sure that you're not alone. Make sure you're holding on faith, and make sure you have some practical tools for your like emotional, physical, and mental wellness. And we try to give you a few of them. So next one.
Yeah, especially if you've had really traumatic situations. Like, it's easy to focus on those. Those are the big moments in our life, and it's easy to stay
Absolutely.
focused on that stuff. I could easily stay focused on fixated on the car accident and what happened with that, or any number of things. So anyway, next one is connection. I think it's understated how important connection is. Um, you all know that we're born totally dependent, of course, right? We depend on somebody else for everything. And it seems like the moment that we come out of that womb, we're struggling to assert our independence as human beings, right? All the way up into our teenage years, man, we are fighting tooth and nail to get our independence. The true, or I should say, the mark of true maturity when it comes to relationships, though, is when we realize the a mature relationship is interdependent, right? It's not I don't need you. It's not I don't need anybody, or I do need you, or I do need, if you get stuck in dependence or interdependence, and I see a lot of people these days, especially in the independence phase, right? Then I don't think you're living your best true mature life. So connection is important, because we are meant to be interconnected as human beings. It's just kind of how we're designed, right? And I will tell you that I decided to look this up, right? So so it's real easy. I went on the web on the internet and I looked it up. What are the states with the highest suicide rate? Alaska, Montana, and Wyoming. The states with the lowest population density
Mm.
are Alaska, Wyoming, and Montana, right? So, so it bears out in real life. And there's actually a pretty famous story. It's a meta-analysis, right? Where they went out and they looked at a bunch of other studies and they brought the information together and they came up with a conclusions. And it said that there is a 50% increased likelihood of survival for participants with stronger social relationships. You
Mm.
have a 50% greater chance of living when you have good, strong connections. And what are we talking about? 5 to 7 people that you can call in the middle of the night, no matter what, and that's what research shows, 5 to 7 people. Um, you know, to be clear, this means that having relationships is more important to your health as a human being than smoking or alcohol consumption. And it's better for you than having physical activity or physical exercise. And it's and that and the effects, the positive effects that you get from that. I was stunned when I first realized this, at how stark it shows the importance of human relationships. Quick story, because I think people want to hear some of my stories too, right? This one's from jail. When I was in jail, yeah, I don't fit in well in jail. I'm a business owner, a guy from the suburbs, and I'm in a downtown jail, which I don't walk right, I don't talk right, I don't have any tattoos, so I clearly do not fit in down there, and I'm keeping to myself because I want to stay out of trouble. And I'm not really talking to anybody or doing anything, but all the other inmates in my pod see I don't have anything, right? And commissary ain't coming for another week. And I'm not eating because the jail food is just horrible. Anyway, I come back to my bunk one day and I sitting there laying on my bed was 2 bags of barbecue potato chips, a brownie, and a fruit cup. Now, if you've never been to jail, you may not know this, but commissary is everything. I mean, that's the currency. That's and to come back and these guys don't even know me, and then somebody else gave me a pencil, and somebody else gave me a paper to write letters, and another one gave me books to read, and I was
Wow,
telling,
that's not the story like I thought it's gonna go.
yeah, right.
Like when it starts with gel and how you not fit in, I'm like,
And these are bad people too. I mean,
yeah.
this is I'm in protective custody. So I'm in there with child molesters, rapists, snitches, a bunch of people who are not liked by the general population.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was talking to my wife and I'm telling her about this. I said, this is what these guys did. And she looks them up on the prison website. In the US, you can go on a website for any jail in the country and you can look up inmates, right? And she writes them letters. And she wrote him a letter just saying, hey, I want to thank you for being showing kindness to my husband. And I'll be praying for you in your circumstances. And I hope everything works out. And I got a guy coming to me. His name's Preacher. Preacher got no teeth, pretty rough looking guy. He has that letter in his hand from my wife. Preacher spent more than half of his life in prison. And he says, he's got like tears in his eyes. And he says, I've
I'm
been in
making
here.
tears in my eyes now.
And he says, I've been in here for 7 months and I haven't received one piece of mail.
Mm.
Tell your wife, thank you. I really appreciate this. That's the power of connection that it touches hearts in a guy like Preacher, right?
Wow. That's amazing. I have my own story when you were talking in my mind. It's I said that already before somewhere, like I was sharing with someone. But when I came to Canada, although like I have so many like Discord and all this stuff, I remember our social like how they say, oh, Russian like to drink and all that stuff. But literally the fact is our door never been closed. Like people
Yeah.
was like coming, somebody sees
Yeah.
a friend coming from work from the night shift in the factory. My mom would scream like, what's going on? Stop by. And nobody dressed up with the blow dried hair or like something like messy house, messy lives, like no food. The neighbors comes and they're like, oh my gosh, I have like this crazy time at work, my boss was mean to you, like, so they like literally like, I paying for therapy for this because like honestly I need to beat this out. But I think like
Yeah.
that's what you say, like community and connection, and it's literally that's how we live back home. Everybody knows everything, the talking and everybody like supporting. And I think the fact that it's out, like I don't know, our suicidal rates was like so low. And even like I'm going through like so many different things. The suicide was never in my radar because it was never like I never like I saw people killed, but I never saw like somebody killed themselves like or something. Of course, I'm not talking about overdose. I'm talking about
Right.
mental health, being lonely and alone, don't feeling like belong and all this stuff. And it's a place like with like crazy discord, have no faith, no community. Like, I
Right.
mean, I'm talking about Christian community or service or anything like that. So that is huge anchor. So like if you are feeling alone and in this country, like I kind of like even I got used to it after like being all these years in this country, even like calling my family, we make appointment, we have to look at the schedules. Sometimes we move in those appointments and all this stuff. And it's interesting that now I want to clean house when people come in to visit, like stuff like that. It's and the neighbors doesn't stop by just to have it like it's different. But the fact is you guys like low and you feel you have no purpose, no connection, you feel alone, no family, maybe you newcomer, I don't know, just go find a place to serve. Number one, you're always gonna be needed, volunteers needed every time, anywhere, whatever your heart calling. Maybe it's the homeless, maybe it's the children, like whatever, like you feel that your place is, go and you're gonna find your community. And then like Jeff said, you don't need an army of people, 5 to 7 people. I honestly have three people except than my husband, number one, who I can lay it out everything.
Right.
But the fact that I can call like three people and tell anything, anytime, anywhere, and I know that they're gonna love on me and pray
Yeah.
for me and hold me up. And I have an army like of people who praying. But the fact is that I never really feel lonely and alone anymore because it was number one that first the enemy was attacking me, that I'm alone.
Right.
And And the interesting part through the community, through being with my husband, and even like thinking about one person, my husband stood by me, and he's my safe haven. So you know what? One person can do that difference too. So like if you're in the end of your rope and you like and you're thinking about give up and taking your life, please, find a place. You're so loved. Your life is valuable. You're significant. Maybe like you don't see this right now because it's too dark and you're too close. There
Right.
is purpose for your suffering, and you can turn around and actually be a blessing to someone else as well. So please get connected to someone. If you have no one, connect with me. I have so many resources that I can help you with, or do it on the ground, around you. There's someone, there is one person who will answer your call, and don't give up, reach out, trust someone. If you need help, like go to the hospital, like anywhere, but just save your life because your life is so precious. Anyway, guys, point number 3.
Meaning, you talked about serving, and interestingly enough, finding meaning and purpose in life, or having meaning and purpose in life, reduces the chances of suicide. Finding meaning and purpose in life is something that I guess we've always recognized is important. Scholars have looked at this for many years. But meaning gives us what I say about meaning and purpose in life. When I have meaning, and just like when I climbed Mount Rainier, it was a cool thing to climb a mountain, but adding that to it, adding that meaning and that purpose to it, just made it that much more important. It made it even more epic, if you will. But having meaning and purpose in life, reduces the risk for depression and addiction and suicide. But a lot of people, I think, really struggle with meaning and purpose in life, and that's why I like to talk on this, because it is so important. That But a lot of people really struggle with it. And I think one of the real hangups, Lena, is when we're talking about service and finding meaning and purpose in our lives. Oftentimes we talk about, what is my meaning in life? What is my purpose in life? And that's a really big question, right? To be able to answer that is not something that everybody even is able to do in a lifetime. So, I think we kind of get hung up on that. And what I like to say is, find meaning and purpose in things during your life, things in your life, like climbing a mountain, or, when we have a Super Bowl party, we would collect canned goods, right? Adding meaning and purpose to things in your life. And that oftentimes helps lead you to your meaning and purpose in life. So don't just sit on the sidelines, right? Find meaning, find purpose in things that we do every day. Attach it to your work, attach it to your fun, and oftentimes that helps lead you to where you feel that you should be. Another way we find meaning and purpose in life is by our difficulties, our struggles, our tragedies. You have meaning and purpose, Lena Kubela, because from your most difficult moments in your life. And that oftentimes happens, right? The guys that started AA were a couple of drunks. The Susan G. Komen was started by Susan G. Komen's sister, because Susan G. Komen died as a young woman from breast cancer. Oftentimes we find meaning. In fact, there was a book written by David Kessler, who worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is famous for writing the five stages of grief, right? Depression, anxiety, depression, anger, denial, bargaining, and acceptance. Well, based on their work together, her protege wrote a book later on called Finding Meaning and Purpose, the Sixth Stage of Grief. It's well known that, in our most difficult and our most tragic and our most lowest points in life, that we often raise our fist up and say, I'm going to make something out of this. I'm going to turn this into something. I'm going to turn this around. And that's, kind of like Romans 8:28, right? We're going to make all things work for good. And so, um, purpose and having meaning and purpose in life is important for our mental well-being. I'd say, Lena, I believe that having meaning and purpose is the difference between existing and living, right? Start living when you get meaning and purpose in life, I believe. And it's so important who we are as human beings as well. And I know I say that a lot, but this stuff is part of the fabric of who we are as people. We were meant to have meaning. Tell you a story. A friend of mine, he was a cop. And as a cop, he was often with people in their last moments of life. And he said, he found it interesting that in their last 30 seconds of life, people often said, they often asked, did I make a difference? Did I make a difference? It's so important that in our last moments of life, we want to know that we made a difference in this, that we had an impact on this world, that we did something that's going to live beyond just us. So that's why meaning and purpose is important. I really encourage people, don't sit on the sidelines waiting for your meaning and purpose to fall out of the sky and land on your head. Go out there and get it. Go out there and find meaning and purpose in your life.
That's awesome that you give so many examples. And, in the beginning, you were talking about climbing the mountain, and then you said collecting the cans in the Super Bowl. And I think that's a really good example of the fact that it can be something grand or something
Yeah.
something smaller. And then you say, and in your everyday life, connect everything to your work, to your fun. And that's what I think like the best thing. And I hope like you guys get in this perspective that if you are kind of stuck and thinking like what I'm doing here, where like what should I do, or looking like, oh, like I cannot climb the mountain. And sometimes that's what's stopping. And how you said sitting on the sidelines, it's that fear that you cannot do this or that. But another thing that I was thinking about, that helping someone else, and that's like meaning and purpose in itself. By serving someone else, it's actually serving you and helping you. So instead of thinking like only like about yourself when you're doing something outside of yourself. And it's actually connected in my mind to the beginning of our conversation about the positive thinking. When we're trapped in our own thinking about ourselves, like all those thoughts, mostly negative, and it's just too heavy like a burden. But when you serve and doing something for others, like even collecting the food for the fact that you're so grateful that you have abundance and you can share that with someone, and then can lead you for something. God can take that and think like, you have this amazing attitude of the being generous. So maybe like he lead you like to the next step and the next step, and it's gonna start rolling. But if you
Right.
not take that action and just sit on sidelines and just marinate in your stinking thinking, like I think
Yeah.
Joyce Meyer is saying that, so that will keep you kind of trapped in in that state. But when you go to serve, and think about somebody else, and it feels good. You know how you said that we made for it? So when you serve, it's actually like pleasure to doing stuff. Like it's good to be kind, it's good to be nice, it's good to share. When you have food and you're grateful that you have food, you go and feed somebody else. Because literally, honestly, I've been starving in my life. So
Yeah.
when I actually went to the food bank here for the first time, I was mind blown that people giving away food. And I was like, and it was a good food, like cans and
Yeah.
vegetables. And there was volunteers in the church that treat you kindly, they give you back. I was like, when I come out, like I was ecstatic. But then when I was serving, so like I was on both sides, and honestly, it's feel good to
That
receive,
cool. Yeah.
and like it's cool way to give too. And it's definitely antidote from this state of mind that like lots of us right now in, because we feeling lonely and alone. And after pandemic, it's so terrible. We have like so many fears and so many lies that we are believe. But I'm telling you, just try it. If you're already serving, like honestly, I pray the blessing multiply and all this. I know, like, you know what we're talking about. But if you like in that state that you're actually looking for meaning and purpose and think that it have to be something grand, just start small. Smart, start where you are. Maybe there's friend who needs help,
Right.
and that could start an amazing or ministry or passion, and it can build on that. Just important part, don't sit on the sideline. Okay, next.
L- Live outside yourself, right?
Live outside yourself. That sounds like in the podcast episode name. So go ahead.
Forgiveness. Forgiveness. When I say that, it may have sent a chill down the spine of some of the listeners. This is, one of the most important aspects of mental health and well-being. I don't hear it being talked about much. But I am of the mind that, I try to practice what I call radical forgiveness. Um, because, you know, unforgiveness, I think, just is the cause of a lot of drag in our lives, and that's one of those areas where we need to fly higher, where there's less drag. We talked about that last time, right? Passenger jets fly at 35,000 feet because there's less drag. There's less friction. When you fly higher, there's less friction. And when I talk about forgiveness, when I talk about radical forgiveness, I talk about forgiving yourself first, because you cannot forgive anybody else any more than you forgive yourself. Um,
That
for me, forgiving myself for the death of my friend, that was harder than climbing Mount Rainier, I can tell you that.
Oh, I bet.
But I knew that if I didn't, that I was basically sentencing myself to a life of misery. I know that my friend would have wanted it. I know that, that's part of my faith, forgiveness and reconciliation. Um, because, and I'll tell you, Lena, you know what I think is the scariest verse in the whole Bible?
What is it?
Scariest verse in the whole Bible, we all say it, right? Is in the Lord's Prayer, forgive us our trespasses as as we forgive those who trespass against us, right?
Hmm.
So basically, and that's kind of convicting. Certainly is for me, because what we're saying there is I want to be forgiven as much as I am willing to forgive others.
Good one.
Oh man, when you've been through some stuff in life, that's hard, right? I want to be forgiven more than that, God. I've cried about that one. I want to be forgiven more than I'm willing to forgive. And you have the most, one of the most incredible forgiveness stories that I've ever heard. That you were willing to forgive your father, who gave you up to be a sex slave. That just is,
That's not me. That's all about Jesus. Honestly, guys, like there's another thing, like for everyone who listening, that forgiveness didn't come to me, and I bet didn't come to you, Jeff, because you wanted to forgive like all your offenses yourself and everything. It's come with God's strength. I know that I couldn't do it in my own strength.
yeah.
And if you don't know the forgiveness like that, or if you don't know God, please like look into Jesus, because honestly, it's so much more easier to do life with him, because he give you that this supernatural ability through faith to actually reconcile with your past, with yourself, with your friends, family, whatever like you're going through. And guess what? It's not one-time deal. It's gonna be an ongoing practice
Every
for
day.
the rest of your days.
Yeah, that's
Forgive,
another one.
reconcile.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I do my gratitudes, I do forgivenesses as well, whether it's my mom, my brother, my sister, myself, whatever. I've got a long list. God, one of the ones I think that people miss a lot is institutions, politics, right? Everybody gets so wound around the axle these days on politics. There's a lot of unforgiveness there. And
And
at the end,
unforgiveness brings resentment
yeah, yeah. And at the end
uh,
of the day, it's all about releasing our anger and our
and
resentment,
negative
right? It's all
emotions.
about that.
Yeah.
So, so I've got a story for you here. You want to hear another story?
Yes.
So when I was on trial, or when I was going through the court system, there was a lot of publicity about my car accident, right? I'm a business owner. My friend was a Catholic priest. It was great headline news on the front page of the local newspaper several times. And there was this one guy. His name was Gary. And I didn't know Gary. Gary supposedly knew Chris, my friend, and Gary used to be a bailiff, so he knew his way around the courthouse. Anyway, Gary was made it his mission to make sure that I got persecuted to the fullest extent of whatever was possible. He was talking to the prosecutor's office. He was talking to the press. And he was even talking to Chris's family and trying to stir up bitterness and resentment. In fact, he's probably the reason that I got sentenced to jail time. The crime that I got pled guilty to rarely carries jail time, but judges are elected. It
So
was
he
always
was on a mission to destroy you.
yes, yeah, pretty much. And he was pretty successful at it. 2 years after I got out of jail, Gary reached out to me. He sent me a letter, and I don't have it with me. I left it sitting in the other room. But in this letter, Gary asked me for my forgiveness, and he wanted to know that I guess that he forgave me, that he didn't have any ill will towards me. But more than anything else, it's clear in that letter that he was asking for my forgiveness. Now, my attorney tells me, don't call the guy. You're still on probation. He was bad news before. I wouldn't trust him, but I had it on my heart that I needed to call him. So he left me a voicemail. I had his phone number and I called him up, and Gary was just looking for forgiveness, right? And I had decided when I was in jail that forgiveness was like first on the list of things that I needed to focus on if I wanted to ever, get my head straight again. So Gary was, he was top on that list of people that I needed to forgive, and I was happy to give him the forgiveness that he was seeking. What I didn't realize though, Gary was dying.
Mm.
Gary, I believe he had cancer. He never told me this. I found out, but Gary was dying, and before he died, he wanted to reconcile.
Reconcile. Yeah.
He wanted forgiveness, and I was glad to give that to him. It was good for him. It was good for me. It was some flowers growing out of the shit of this whole situation.
Isn't that interesting? If you were like marinating in a bitterness and anger towards him, what a mess it would be for the end of this man's life and for the continue of your life.
And this isn't, I'm sure, the first story you've heard like this. Um, it seems pretty commonplace. I think it's even part of the country song, right? Live like you were dying, you seek forgiveness that you've been denying. Um, so, I think that this is a pretty common story. If somebody knows and has time to prepare, they seek reconciliation, they seek forgiveness. And they do that so that they can die in peace. And I think that there's a very important lesson for all of us there, right? If that's what we do when we want to die in peace, then shouldn't we be doing that to live in peace?
That is crazy. Some people like not talking to their children for 20 years. And that's so funny
Yeah.
because sometimes I'm thinking like about my mother and I'm like, man, it's so hard to be there in that space. And you know what? For people who don't speak about the children, it's not about judging or anything. I actually just thought about my own situation and I was like brewing in this hate for 20 years. And I'm grateful that you brought up my father because God called me to write my book and actually have um like reconciliation like through this work with myself, with my past, like for myself, for my family, and for people who was involved. And that's how I rebuild relationship with my family, led my father to Christ. But with my mother, it's such a difficult relationship, but I don't have hate against her. I have like complete peace by the grace of God, and we still rebuilding relationship. And it's still work to be done. But the fact is that when I forgive them, I thought like it was like all about them, but I did it because God said, I forgive you. And I know like how much He forgive me. So I did it only because I trust Him and He was so faithful to me. And guess what? The day I give that burden to Him and forgive them just because they are my parents and they didn't know any better, like, and honestly, guys, I kid you not, I think like I felt like so empty, and then God filled me with peace, love, and joy. And it's so amazing because I thought like it forgiveness was for them, but
Yeah.
it was for me because
Yeah.
it's literally took away that burden that I carry and affect in so many different areas of my life and my relationship with myself and others. And when it's like was empty, there's like God just like have space to fill me in like with all the good positive things. And it was blown away. And I was so grateful to God that He led me to forgive them because I got freedom. And
Mhm.
it's such a beautiful, um I don't know, like beautiful way to live. So I now I try to reconcile as fast as possible because I know that sweet spot of being free from this nonsense that's going on. So you guys, like, honestly, look into reconciliation in your life because it's for not only for that person but for you as well. So we touch on focus, gratitude, meaning, forgiveness. Is there one more?
Well, depending on the crowd that I'm talking to, since I'm a business person, I talk to business crowds, so I don't usually bring up the faith aspect with them as much, even though these are all kind of faith concepts, right, or faith-based concepts. But faith, having faith, belief in a personal higher power is very important to our mental health and well-being. Study after study after study has shown it. It's better for our marriages, it's better for our relationships, it's better for depression, it's better for suicide. And it's not a magic pill. I'm not trying to say that. It's better for our physical health. It's just that it's just like gratitude. It's just like forgiveness. As human beings, and purpose, we were made to have this relationship with a higher power. And here's an interesting study here, right? And there's a point to this, right? There's a study. It's called the relationship of religiosity and marital satisfaction. It said that the findings of this study are in line with previous research showing that the more religious couples reported happier and more stable married lives than did other married couples, right? And these are people who regularly attend and that type of thing. The thing is that this study was conducted in Pakistan, which is 97% Muslim, right? This is not about me trying to push my religion on you, right? This is about us, who we are as people. We are made to have this relationship with a higher power. That's why it's one of the first things that you do in AA is understand that this relationship is important, and it's about having something higher, bigger than yourself, right? If I don't have a higher power, then I'm my own God. And frankly, Lena, I think we have way too many of those these days, right? Um, eh,
And sorry to interrupt you, but it goes right in the beginning of this episode again. When I'm my own God,
yeah,
I'm in my own self, and half of like, oh no, like for something, 80% of the stuff is negative. Whoa, what are you producing into the world?
right, right. So, And you won't hear that from therapists out there because like 80% of them are atheists anyway. But the research is very clear, right? This isn't just Jeff and what Jeff feels and what worked for him, right? This is very clear. Very good research over many years. And I can tell you it's made a huge difference for me. I will also tell you that God has been very present during my most difficult moments. And yeah, that is very important. It kind of ties everything together that I've talked about before now.
Absolutely. And I have to tell you guys too, I gave my life to Christ when I was 31 year old. And I thought like I have the checklist after I left all the abusing situation, trafficking, drug abuse and all that stuff. And I had the list of the stuff that I can achieve to get freedom, peace, worth, value. And I got all of that stuff in the list. I got medals, trophies, names, businesses, all that stuff. Tried to be normal, but guess what? I never have peace. I have so much anxiety. My PTSD was through the roof. I literally lived in hell. And when I give my life to Christ, nothing really changed around me. But I have this supernatural peace
Right.
of knowing that I belong. And guess what? I'm not introducing myself like as I'm like human trafficking survivor or anything like that. I know that I am, but you know who I am? I'm a daughter of the king. And when your perspective shifted from the victim to victor, that's where like my life started building. And it's been 10 years I'm working on myself, my mental health, physical health. It does not disappear. But the fact is that I know who I am. I know that I'm loved, belong, that my life is precious, that now I'm serving people as well. And I want you to see the power of faith, the power of belonging to God, And I'm thinking for like 31 years, it was so difficult. Now it's so difficult, but it's miraculously easy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's important here too. I talk about a personal God, right? And I wanted before because I know we're probably running short on time, but I wanted to tell you about this story because that's a hard concept even for us. I'm a lifelong Christian, and it's a hard concept to get your head around that God is personal to all of the billions of people who ever lived on this planet. I don't know if you've ever seen some stories about people who have died and come back to life, but all of them talk about a very personal God, a God who knows them, knows their name, hugs them, and welcomes them. My own story is when I was in jail on my 40th day in jail. That night, it was December the 12th. Late at night, it was dark out in a bad part of town. It was sub freezing, and a visitor showed up, and I wasn't expecting any visitors. And I went out in the Sally port, and there's this little old lady there. And I said, "Ma'am, are you here to see me?" And she said, she looked at a little piece of paper on her hand. She said, "I'm here to see Jeremy Higgins." And I said, "Well, ma'am, I'm Jeffrey Higgins." And she said, she looked at the guard, and the guard said, looked in the computer, and he said, "Ma'am, I looked in the jail, and we don't have anybody here by the name of Jeremy Higgins. All we have is Jeffrey Higgins, and that's him." Excuse me. So I looked at this old lady. I said, "Ma'am, who are you? Who sent you? Why are you here?" She said, "I just had it on my heart that I need to come down here and be with and pray with Jeremy Higgins." I said, "Ma'am, what's your name?" And she said, "My name's Sister Karen from the Franciscan convent. And I just had it on my heart that I need to come down here and be with you." And I was kind of stunned, of course, because my friend who died was a Catholic priest. This little old lady didn't know who I was. I didn't know who she was. She followed her heart, and I believe God's calling to come and to minister to me that day. And I believe that when I say God is close to the brokenhearted,
Amen.
that I believe that the veil between us and God is actually thinnest when we are our most broken.
Absolutely. And I know that's it's easiest way to see God when people loving on you, that's God. Everything, all the good stuff, it's from God. So Honestly, Jeff, like I can talk to you like honestly every time we meet, it's like it's amazing. And I know we connected from beginning, the way like we are think similarly. We have our faith in God as well, like oh overcoming adversity. We like really like on the same page around, about like lots of stuff. I do believe that your story have to be shared. I'll do anything possible to spread this message through my platform, and you guys can check it out part one on Love and Beloved podcast, tune in on YouTube. And honestly, if something resonates with you, don't wait, just take those pieces, think about it, act on it, because it's very important. You hear now these messages, and not only like thinking, you have to be a doer too. That's where it's gonna bring you the most benefits and fruits. And honestly, it's very Christian. Saying the fruits of the spirits, which is love, joy, peace, kindness, self-control. You're gonna look into it, I know, or I can post that as well. So Jeff, where can people go find you more about you and your work?
Yeah, so you can look me up on it. I have a website. My website is jeff-higgins.com. So jeff-higgins.com. You can go on my website. You can find me on Facebook, Struggles and Summits. And yeah, I'd love to hear back from you. I love feedback. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. If there's something more you'd like to hear, let me know.
Absolutely. And before I let you go, I would like to ask you my signature question. What does love and to be loved means to you?
So at my daughter's weddings, I had three daughters, and I had to give three fathers of the bride speeches, and I had this in all of them, and it's that love is a verb, right? Love is patient, love is kind, love does not seek its own. Love is a way we act towards one another as much as it is, if not more than it is a feeling. Um, and so that's what it is to me to love and to be love. It's how we are towards each other, the patience and the kindness that we show each other.
That's awesome. Is any final thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, you brought it up earlier about people who might be at the bottom. Some of them might be listening to this show. I always like to encourage people. I've been down pretty low myself, obviously, but it is from my firm belief for all of you that there is never a broken too broken. And I am living proof, I believe, that you can come back from just about anything, even when you're flat on your back. And I encourage people to keep that thought in mind as you're going through the struggles in life.
Absolutely. That's good advice. And guys, honestly, I just wrote that never too broken, and I just staring at this. And honestly, this is story of my life. This is story of Jeff life. This is story to all of us who is still walking this earth. The difference is we just chose not to give up, and that's again like it's a choice. So please choose life. Thank you, Jeff, for being our guest today, and you provided so much insight, and we truly appreciate you sharing with us. And it's been wonderful conversation as always. Our special guest, Jeff Higgins, and Jeff is public speaker and founder of Savor Seasoning. See, I
You
didn't
got
pay
it.
attention to this, and I hope, like I say it right, because last episode I laughed about this word, but um, through his work, Jeff continues to inspire others to look beyond their circumstances and discover the deeper meaning in lives. And his story is powerful reminder that no matter what we face, we have the ability to overcome and thrive as long as we stay true to our purpose and our faith. And again, guys, don't hesitate to reach out to Jeff. I will post the links to everything mentioned to this episode, his website, contact information. And please stay tuned for another edition of Love and Beloved. And thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Jeff. I'm grateful for you and your time.
Thank you, Lena. It's been a joy.
Awesome.
All right.